Hey, what's up guys? It's your boy Big Booty Judy back with another Elden Ring challenge video, and last time I asked you guys to guess who this man was, and a ton of you guessed it was this guy whose name I'm not even going to attempt to mispronounce, and you're all wrong. So very wrong. It's clearly Dark Link. Come on guys. As the great Troy Bolton in Wildcats once said, Wildcats, get your head in the game! Now I realize this next guy I'm making does look a little bit basic, so I did take the liberty of photoshopping his most iconic feature onto him just to help out you absolute legends. And speaking of legends, this video is sponsored by Raid Chat. No, I'm just kidding. I wish. Anyway, enough with all that random
bullcrap.
Let's actually get into the run and find out if you can beat Elden Ring only using Frenzied Flame Incantations. I started with a Thief character because he starts with the most arcane, but he doesn't actually start with a seal to be able to cast the incantations, but that's okay because I'm planning on getting the Dragon Communion seal anyway, and that's at the very beginning of the game. Which is actually the opposite of the Frenzied Flame seal, which is what I really want, but I can't get that until way later in the game, but when I do, it'll increase our Frenzied Flame incantations by 20%. Also, I'm going for the Lord of the Frenzied Flame ending of the game for obvious reasons. Luckily, to get the Dragon Communion seal, we don't actually have to kill anybody, we just happen to be wandering down the street, and the man who's holding the seal for us just happens to get hit by a drunk driver and drop the seal for us with zero intervention on our part. And thank Obama, we don't actually have to kill anyone to get our first incantation, we just need to head down to the ailing village, run to the church, past a few New York rats, and just grab our incantation right off the ground. And like I said before, I do plan on getting the Frenzied Flame seal, but in order to do that, we do need to do this quest with this lady who asked me to deliver a letter on how to commit tax fraud to her father, so we skedaddle on over to the Castle Morn, run through about 100 enemies to deliver this letter, and he rewards us with a twig. Fuck yeah, I love twigs! The next step actually involves us killing the boss here, but I don't actually have enough faith to even use the incantation that I have, so I ride around crushing some skulls, giving cheap blowjobs until I have enough runes to level up enough to get enough faith to actually use my incantation. I decided to go test it out on this giant over here to see what it does, and it lets us spit some super hot fire straight out of my face, but
I'm not a rapper.
It does an okay amount of damage, but what it lacks in damage, it makes up for in the ability to stagger enemies because it's actually really easy to stagger the giant with it. This is also when I realized that using these kind of incantations will build up the madness on ourselves like when I lived with an astrology girl, which is something we will have to deal with later, but luckily you can get some armor with more focus on it that'll help reduce the buildup a whole lot more later. What really sucks about the madness status effect in the game though is it actually only affects these regular small human-sized enemies, so that basically makes it useless against like 99% of the bosses in the game. Before we take on the boss at the castle, I grab a few somber smithing stones, I make the stoner digger troll my little bitch, and then I grab this talisman that makes my incantation stronger, and then I head on over to the boss. I got lucky that this dude was only aggressive some of the time because half the time he would just not stop running towards me and chasing me because I need to stand still to be able to use my attack and it takes a few seconds to get it off. Luckily the other half of the time he'll just kind of slowly and creepily walk towards me like me when I see a baddie at the party, but I would probably do the same thing if I saw a strange man spewing a fountain of fire out of his face hole. I was actually able to take him down pretty quickly though, I was actually even able to stagger him a couple times, and the damage was actually pretty good for only being level 15 and having a +2 seal. Definitely couldn't be mad at it, but we'll see how it holds up against some tougher bosses later. Now that we have the sword we need, we can continue on to the next step of the quest, so I take it back to our twig dealer Edgar, and then he asks me to find his daughter, who was unfortunately murdered by the hash-slinging slasher. We don't have time to mourn though because I need to head all the way over to the lakes to the Revenge Shack, but I knew I was going to have to fight an invader there, so I figured I might as well head to the Frenzied Village first to get my next couple incantations. The worst part though is I need to run past all these archer bitches, and apparently they could snipe you from outer space with their glasses cracked while wearing fucking boxing gloves because they do not ever fucking miss, and that shit really grinds my gears. Eventually I make it to the town full of my people, and it was actually surprisingly difficult to kill this scarab because of all the rats surrounding it, and usually he would disappear before I could actually kill him, but I figured out if you just kill the rats and then quit out and load back in, the rats will still be dead, but the scarab will be back in its original position. They don't teach you that in boating school. The next incantation I need here is in this spooky tower, and it's called the Howling Shriek, but honestly it kind of sucks, and I don't even have enough faith to use it anyway, so shit. So we head back to the Revenge Shack with 0 new incantations that we could actually use, only to get invaded by our old pal Edgar, and since he's actually human, I was actually able to affect him with madness, so that made the fight a lot easier. He put up a good fight, but after a while, I did in fact murder this man in cold blood for a grape and some beef. But I've killed for less though. Now I can go give that grape to this lady, and that's the last step of the quest we can do for now, so I head back to Limgrave to take on Margaret Thatcher. I was determined to get enough faith to actually be able to use my beam attack on the next boss, so I decided to kill the dragon here, and I was actually kicking his ass pretty good until he generously decided to step on me with his feet, unlike my selfish ass ex-girlfriend who said, "It's weird." Okay, whatever. I still didn't have quite enough runes to get to the level I needed to be able to use it, so I headed on over to Cleveland to kill this tree boss, because I figured I might as well kill him now, because I'm gonna need his cracked tier, because it increases my fire damage, and I'm gonna need that at some point anyway. And yeah, he fucked me up quite a bit, not gonna lie. I did manage to kill him eventually with a combination of running circles around the tree, hiding behind its roots, or hitting him at the end of his combos, or when he just decided to completely forget about me and just walk backwards to a starting position, so I definitely took advantage of that. This fight definitely took a lot longer than I thought it would, mostly because I'm such a low level and I would get one shot by pretty much every single one of his attacks, but that did give me enough runes to finally be able to use my beam attack. I decided to go test it out on the giant again, and yeah, the damage isn't quite as good as the other incantation I have, but it definitely makes up for it with its pretty insane range, honestly, so I was pretty happy with it for now. And after all that preparation, I finally felt ready to go eat Margaret's ass. I mean, kick Margaret's ass. I mean, eat Margaret's ass. It definitely was not a pretty fight, but it was a fight for sure. It probably would have been a lot safer for me if I would have just stuck to only the beam attack, but I did try to use both my incantations to spice it up a little bit, but I usually chose a really bad time to use the Flame of Frenzy incantation, and I would usually always take a hit from it. It did only take me a couple tries to beat him, so I never really got a foolproof strategy or good timing on when to use it most of the time, but usually I would just get really far away, use my special beam cannon on him, and I was actually pretty happy with the damage it was doing. Like I said before, I did try to use my other incantation also, but even without charging it at all, it would still take a bit too long, and I would usually end up taking a hit, but it was definitely worth it because it did a good amount of damage, and as long as I didn't die, I was happy. It was still pretty fun though, even though I didn't make it look very good with my very non-poggers gaming skill, I got through it pretty easily. Unfortunately, after that, I realized I probably needed some better armor that had more focus, and I only had one other set of armor on me, and don't laugh. It's better. I needed it for the focus, okay? Now, normally I would just run past all these annoying-ass bird enemies, aka government spy drones, wake up sheeple, but since I'd had this beam attack, it makes it really easy to kill them, actually. We pretty quickly make it to the Rick the God fight, and that was another pretty fun boss, but I did have to come in with 0 HP flask because every time I would just run out of FP before I could actually kill him, so I definitely had to come in with fully stocked FP instead. I mainly stuck with the beam attack until he got really close because this is another one of those bosses that just like to walk really slow towards you a lot of the times, making it super easy just to keep beaming him in the face from a distance. I was able to incorporate some of the Flame of Frenzy incantation attack a few times because it does use a lot less FP and does a lot more damage, but obviously it's a lot more of a risk to do that since you have to do it up close, but I really needed to conserve my FP during this fight, so I pretty much was forced to use it at least a few times. I probably could have just made it a lot easier on myself by running around the world grabbing some more golden seeds for more flasks, but I am just such a lazy boy and really didn't feel like it, but I was able to kill him anyway without that. Now that we've taken care of Rick, we can grab this grape, take it to the lady, and then grab another grape that's actually right next to her in these ruins, and this ruin also has a talisman that raises my faith, so that's pretty neato. Then we could just go right up here, talk to her again, and then I tell her that she's actually been munching on some human eyes, and then she proceeds to throw up right in front of me. Now we could head back to the Frenzied village where we got those incantations from earlier, but now we have to fight this NPC who has the exact same powers as us, and totally on purpose, very intentionally, I make him fall off this cliff, not by accident at all, and then he falls to his death, and I take the grape that he's been holding in his pocket for some reason. Now we get to head back to that lady again, and at this point, she's just absolutely fiending for a grape, and I am simply just her low-life grape dealer, but that's going to be the last step until we can get to the capital. Before I headed for Mommy Ronella, I decided to kill the dragon that's guarding the key like usual, but you already saw me kill a dragon earlier, and this one really isn't much different. He just has an assload more of health, but he's also very easy to stagger and very easy to kill, just like the other one. Next is the Red Wolf boss, and I really wasn't sure how this one was going to go because he can be pretty fast sometimes, and I immediately take a hit, and then the boss just kind of freezes in place for some reason. Either out of complete fear, or he was just admiring the drip, it's kind of hard to say for sure. Regardless, I lasered him a couple times, spewed some fire out of my nostrils a couple times, and he was dead pretty quick.
Call an ambulance! But not for me!
I think we were both a little surprised because I definitely got lucky that he froze on me, and at the same time, even though he did freeze on me, I survived with like a fart of health left. I did decide to skip the Ronella fight for now because surprisingly she was kicking my ass and I could just not stop staring at her feet, so we move on to Radon for now. I do need to get the medallion so I could activate the festival, and I actually did try to just skip through the medallion part by fighting the wyvern again, but yeah, I really was not doing that much damage at all, and I don't think it would have been possible for me with the amount of FP and amount of flasks I had right now. So I did have to do it the puss boy way and go grab the 2 medallions. After I got the medallions, I headed to Seathwater Cave and I ran around in the pitch black for a while until I found the absolute best armor in the game. And not only is the drip immaculate, but the focus is even higher than the outfit that I was currently wearing, so hopefully my madness won't be a problem anymore. Now that we have that out of the way, I'm ready to take on Radahn, and it's a pretty tedious fight, I'm not gonna lie. 99% of the danger comes from me trying to time my beam from a safe distance because it does take a good second to charge it, and this was probably the first time that I was actually feeling the limits of the range from the beam. So I had to find the sweet spot of being close enough to actually hit him with the beam and being far enough away that I don't get hit myself. I did have to stay closer to him than I would have liked, but I definitely found it much easier to ride around on my horse the entire time, kind of like I did with the bow only run, except this was actually a lot harder because the range isn't as good as the bow is, and it takes a lot longer to actually get an attack off, even if I don't charge it at all. But if I didn't charge it at all, it would do dick for damage, so I kind of had to charge it all the way, or I wouldn't have enough damage to actually be able to kill him, because I ended up with like 1 extra FP flask, so if I wasn't charging it every single time, I probably wouldn't have even had enough to kill him. Anyway, I did destroy this little biatch, and then I headed for the capital.
Blow up. I don't even understand how the fuck my plug talk.
I did have to kill the tree sentinel before I could actually get into the capital, and yeah, this fight was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be because none of my attacks were actually fast enough to be able to get off and actually avoid the fireball or the lightning strike at the same time, so I did have to come up with a pretty cheesy strategy, honestly, to get through it. So basically at the beginning of the fight, I would just run up on him, hit him with that Flame of Frenzy attack, but the most annoying part of this fight, I was actually only able to stagger him this one single time because out of all of the 15 attempts it took me to beat him, I was only able to stagger him this one single time. Even though every time I would actually get the noise as if I staggered him, but he actually just wouldn't go down at all, so that actually made it pretty frustrating. But after I would hit him with that, I would run away like a very brave boy until I de-aggroed him, and then I would ride back, beam him in the face, and then ride away again, and then just rinse and repeat that for a while. I did have to kill one of the giants sitting behind me because he has a bow, and that is quite the nuisance if you don't kill him because he's going to be constantly shooting at you, but yeah, this isn't the most skilled way to do it, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Now that we've made it to the capital, we can continue the quest from earlier and get some new incantations, but that does involve us running through these sewers, which I absolutely hated because it is so confusing down here and I can never actually tell where I'm going, but after a ton of running around, I do finally make it to the next boss. But the damage is pretty shit, and even if I hit him with every single one of my attacks, I don't think I would be able to do enough damage to kill him right now, so we're gonna have to come back to this later.
That's a lot of damage.
After that, I did start to do the Mask Guys quest so I can get to that area where I can do some rune grinding, but you do have to do some evasions with this method, but I wasn't actually able to kill anyone, but I did try to traumatize these guys by letting my body splat right in front of them after jumping off this mountain, but I did die before I could even hit the ground, and then he teabagged me because his mother clearly did not love him enough as a child. So after I did some rune grinding, I leveled up a bunch, went and grabbed the Scorpion Talisman, which increases my fire damage by 12%, and then we headed off to the Piss Ghost himself, and he did not stand a chance. Like, imagine getting your shit rocked from a man covered in mushrooms. Like, that could not be me. I really did catch this man lacking, and he will probably never recover from this embarrassment. We did unlock another talisman slot for beating him, so I do go out to hunt for the sword talisman that increases my damage when I'm at full health, and since I've literally never been hit a single time in any of these games ever, I figured that was a pretty good deal. I did have to kill another boss to get it, but gee golly Aunt Dolly, I rocked his shit and grabbed the loot and dipped. Now we get to fight this jabroni again, and sheesh, I'm surprised by how much damage I was doing. It really didn't take long at all for me to get him to the second phase. I just kept running away while he leisurely strolls towards me, letting me beam him right in the nostrils, and I was even able to use my Frenzied Fountain attack at the last bit, and thanks to the ye old mushroom suit, I was never even giving myself madness a single time during this fight. And once we get to the second phase, once again, he just leisurely strolls towards me, just letting me go absolute ham, beef, and chicken on his ass until he eventually wakes up, but at that point, it was way too late for him because I only needed a few more hits to finish him off. Get fucked, my guy. 3 out of 10. Throw him in the trash. Yo, they got Mothman in this game? Shit. Before the fire giant fight, I decided to get a couple more somber smithing stones, and since I'm just such a swell guy, I decided to take Sparky Boom Man online to help some folk in need, and also I needed some rune arcs. And also, I decided to do the concentrated snowfield skip so I can get to this other incantation real quick, and I was gonna come back to do it again so I can get some footage of me doing it, but they literally patched it overnight, so thank Adam Sandler I got it before they patched it, because I would have had to fight a pretty tough boss to get there. Before we actually take on the fire giant though, I do need to kill the boss we skipped earlier because I want to get that unique cutscene after beating the fire giant, and I still do dick for damage to him, but it is a bit better than it was before. My entire strategy for this fight was literally just running from corner to corner in the room, just trying to beam him in his pretty little mouth. And yeah, I know these are some very, very pro gamer strats I'm using, and my hella epic strats for this boss do take absolutely forever though. It does get a bit easier later in the fight after he destroys all the pillars in the room, because that does make it easier to run past him, but holy shit, I wish I was doing more damage. I'm lucky that this wasn't like a super difficult, complex fight to learn or anything, because after a few tries, I did learn most of his moves and how to avoid them, but that doesn't really help the fact that he has like a million health, and I really need to avoid getting hit for like 10 minutes straight. It was pretty nice when he got stuck on the bench or something, because after that, he would just keep trying to throw his smegma at me over and over, but yeah, this was a super annoying fight that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, except for Waldo, because that guy can go fuck himself. After that absolute abomination of a fight, guess what our reward is? Yup, platforming in a Souls game. Yeah, woohoo! Look at the cock on this guy. I did not die multiple times at all. It was first try, baby. But once we get to the bottom, we do get a new incantation. That is pretty cool, but unfortunately, it's only useful on human enemies, so yeah, that sucks. Then we get to talk to this lady again, and God only knows how the fuck she managed to get down here, but I was so impressed that I got naked right in front of her. I go through this door, get held tight for the first time in years, and I'm left with some wicked 3rd-degree burns and some cool glowy eyes. And she was just so impressed that she just lights herself on fire right in front of me, and I'm just like, whatever floats your boat, ma'am. I'm not here to judge. But after all that, we finally get the Frenzied Flame Seal that increases our damage by a whopping 20%, which is pretty damn good, honestly. Now I'm actually ready to take on the Fire Giant, and not only was I able to beat him with Frenzied Flame incantations only, but I was able to beat him without taking a single goddamn hit. Woo! Get shit on. The Flame of Frenzy incantation is just really good at staggering him, so it didn't take long at all for me to break his ankles and then stagger him on top of that. And then after that, it was just a matter of not getting caught by his flame attacks, because I suck big booty at avoiding that usually. But if you just stay near those cute feet, it is a lot easier, because at least he won't shoot the fast fireball at you, and that's probably the hardest move for me to avoid during this fight. Other than that, in the first phase, I just wait for him to do an attack, dodge, and then do my own attack, and if that sounds like I'm describing every single fight in the Soulsborne Sekiro Ring series, then you'd be right. Once I get to the second phase though, it's just a matter of riding circles around this little bitch boy, shooting lasers at his chest, face, mouth thing, and the only attack that I really did struggle to avoid during this phase was his flamethrower attack, because usually I would just try to ride away from it, but I would always get caught by it, so eventually I just learned that it's much easier just to ride towards him and just ride circles around him while staying close, because 90% of the time that would work, and it was much easier than just try to ride away from him and getting caught. I'm pretty sure this is the only boss in this entire game that I have ever been able to beat without taking any damage, and I am glad that you are all here to witness this momentous occasion with me. And usually he is a big old bag of dicks, but this time we made him our little business. I was really worried about the Godskin Duo fight, but I really shouldn't have been, because it was way easier than I thought it was going to be. Usually this is like my least favorite fight in the game because I suck so bad at it, but I think I'm starting to suck slightly less. I basically just hid behind these pillars the entire time. I would charge up a Flame of Frenzy incantation, so when they chased me down, they would walk right into a big old fountain of fire, and that would actually do a pretty good amount of damage, especially if I was able to catch them both with it at the same time. It can still be pretty dangerous, especially if you mess up the timing, because you do have to stand still for a while, but if it wasn't for these pillars, I would have gotten absolutely demolished during this fight. I really didn't have to prioritize one over the other, because it was just whoever ran up on me first, because these flames are rated E for everyone. I did like it when the big one started rolling at me after I got him in the second phase, because he would usually get stuck on the pillar, and the skinny one really doesn't seem to do much, even when he was like right next to me, and I can just get a ton of damage on him before he stops rolling, so that was pretty nice. This is probably the only time that I had a pretty decent time with this fight, and I actually didn't want to off myself while fighting them, but finally we beat them, and we can move on to the man of Clergy Beast himself. And guess what? This was another fight that I beat without taking a single goddamn hit. Yes, I know. Thank you. I'm just a normal man just like you who puts his cum sock on 1 foot at a time. The first phase of this boss is always super easy to get through, especially if you're a ranged character, because all you need to do is keep your distance, roll through one of his attacks, and then do your own attack, and it's honestly just a piece of cake to get through. No explanation needed, really. The second phase is what I was worried about though, because I was sure that he would keep trying to attack me every time I tried to charge an attack, but I got lucky and he literally never tried to do that even once. And I think I'm finally at the point that I can actually avoid most of his attacks pretty easily, and I figured at one point I would slip up and get hit and try to heal and it would just mess up my whole flow, but thank Kanye, that never happened. And once again, we made another boss our little bitch during this run, and now I feel like I'm gonna have to do a way harder challenge after this, since a lot of the bosses in this run were bitch made, and I do have an idea already what I'm gonna do, but I'm gonna have to test it out to see if it's even possible at first, so you know, like, slap that subscribe button with your cock if you want to see that. Now it's time for our old friend Gideon, and this is the only boss in this run that I could actually affect with madness, and also I finally got to use his other incantation where I simply pull him in tight, whisper sweet nothings into his ear until he straight up dies from getting turned on so much. Going into this next boss fight, I just knew it was going to be a pain in the keister because he just loves constantly doing his slamming attack that covers the entire arena, so I knew it was going to be really hard finding a time to actually be able to hit him between his attacks. And I was 100% correct. This fight blows. It took me 14 minutes to beat him on this attempt, and saying that out loud doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it really is, especially because 10 minutes into the fight, you could die at any point and have to do it all over again, and that adds up pretty quickly. The only time I could really hurt him is when he does his ultimate mega combustor attack that splits the ground, and that doesn't happen all that often, so it was just doing that, rinse and repeat, running all over the arena until I finally get to the second phase. And the second phase is a lot more of the same because I can still only attack him when he does that huge ground splitting attack and then try to beam him in the ear one time and just wait for him to do it again. I was basically just constantly running for my life like 90% of the time, just constantly avoiding his slams, trying not to get manhandled even though I would absolutely love that, but I was lucky enough to only get body slammed one time, and hey, that is progress from my previous runs. I did severely overestimate how much FP I would need during this fight because I did end it with 6 extra FP flasks and 0 HP flasks because apparently I'm the type of dude that would plug a Febreze wall plug into an extension cord. I also probably would have been a lot less sweaty during this fight if I didn't know in the back of my mind that my controller was going to die at any moment, but I did get lucky and it didn't die until like 3 minutes after I beat him, so thank MGK that did not happen during the fight. Now that we have all that taken care of, I am going to attempt to take out the rest of the shard bearers to prove what an epic gamer I truly am. I did just remember at this point that I totally forgot to ever go take on Mommy Ronella, so I did head back there real quick, and yeah. I know I don't have to do the assassination missions to get to Rykard, but it is satisfying to do this to normal human enemies because I never really got a chance to do it throughout this run, so I figured I would just do it for the hell of it, just for the satisfaction. I do eventually make it to Rykard, and yeah, I could totally be wrong, but I am pretty sure it is not possible for me to have enough P to actually kill this man because he does have 2 health bars, and I'm pretty sure I would run out of FP flasks just getting through the first health bar. Like I said, I could totally be wrong, and I probably am. I bet I could probably put every level towards my mind and use every flask towards my FP flask and then maybe be able to do it, but that sounds like a huge pain in the ass, and I am just not that skilled at the game because I would get one shot at that point, so I'm just going to assume that it's not possible. I know, epic fail. I am very cringe. I'm going to go kiss an oncoming train as punishment. Alright, Lord of Blood time. Since I did have some experience fighting him in his first phase already, I was actually able to get through it a few times without getting hit at all, and I would basically just fight him the same way as I did before. I would just run back and forth, shooting lasers at him whenever possible, and you would think based on the damage I was doing it would be slightly easier, but he regains like most of his health back once you get like halfway down, so it takes a lot longer than you would think. And in order for this to even be possible, I would have to come in with basically no HP flasks, even though I did bring that sacred tier like many of you fine gentlemen and 2.6% of ladies pointed out to me in the last video, but it really didn't matter because I couldn't do it. Yeah, it is entirely possible, but like I said, I couldn't have any HP flasks with me, and I'm not even exaggerating when I say each attempt where I got far into the second phase would take me at least 15 minutes. And after dying in the second phase over and over and putting a tiny little baby dent in my desk, I decided I should probably just move on since this is an optional boss anyway. Whoops, tee. And no, I cannot get past this biatch either, entirely due to my own skill, but I did get past the first phase a few times, so hey, that's progress. Yeah. Alright, time for Ragoon, and this one is a lot less disappointing, I promise. The first phase is terrible. I actually had to get really lucky during this fight, especially at the beginning, because sometimes I could take half of the boss's health before he mollywops me, and sometimes I could only take like a quarter of his health before he mollywops me. Regardless of how I did at the beginning, there's only a few moves after that most of the time I could get a hit on, and I say most of the time because a lot of the times he'll add some random follow-up, or do like a 10-hit combo without stopping, or he'll just slowly walk towards me doing nothing for 10 seconds, and just wait for the millisecond that I try to do an attack and then fling a bunch of sparklers in my face. Eventually I did get a lot better at this fight, but even then I was still only able to get through it to the second phase like 30% of the time, but at least I could get there sometime, so that's all that matters. The second phase, in my opinion, is a lot easier than Ragoon, especially if you have a ranged character, but at the very beginning I would always start with the inescapable Frenzy and just run up on him, try not to get caught by the fire, and do a pretty good amount of damage. For the rest of the fight, I would most of the time just stand at a pretty far distance so I could actually see most of his attacks coming, and most of his attacks really aren't too bad to dodge. It's mostly just a lot of waiting around until he swings first, until I can respond with a beam to his face, but the only attack that I still to this day have a lot of trouble avoiding is that stupid golden ball that spews a bunch of sparklers everywhere that follows you around in the second phase of the second phase. I really hate that one. As you can see though, I'm already really close to beating him, and this is somehow the first time he's done that attack in this fight, so I only need one more hit, so I swear I fucking hate this game. I'm going back to battle for the Bikini Bottom. After that failure, I come back many more times and actually do kick his ass this time. Oh, just kidding, I died again. Alright, for real this time, I do get back here after a million more tries, and I do actually 100% kick his ass, and I did officially beat Elden Ring only using Frenzied Flame Incantations. After that, I take a seat on the throne, we get the Frenzied Flame ending, and I can finally move on with my life. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate all the support and subscribers I've been getting lately. I do have a few more good videos planned for Elden Ring, so subscribe if you want to see that, and have a good rest of your day. Peace.